Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Maqbool with you at Pitafi World. In today's show, we're going to be taking a look at two important stories. The first is in reference to an announcement made by the government with regards to Afghan nationals who choose to stay beyond December 31st this year will be requiring an NOC. And this is, of course, something that has been part of an ongoing engagement with the Afghan nationals and refugees in Pakistan in terms of their peaceful displacement and return to Afghanistan, and what sort of activities that we're going to be taking a look at in terms of the way that it's done is also important. And we've seen that different phases were actually executed in order to ensure that it is done in a peaceful manner. At the same time, of course, this is also something which is extremely important in order to curb terrorist and illegal activities within the country. Something that has also been claimed by the government was involved with regards to the recent protest rally in PTI, in which such criminals and Afghans were part of. And this is, of course, something which is very concerning as to what exactly will be the step forward and how will the government be moving forward with this particular requirement that is now part of any Afghan national who wishes to stay in Pakistan beyond the end of this year. And that is, of course, the requirement of an NOC. What exactly will be the procedure and how will that impact the way that Pakistan has been dealing with Afghan nationals in the past, and how to deal with those that are not involved in criminal or illegal activities and are peaceful, and how to help and facilitate those Afghan nationals and their repatriation or their stay within Pakistan, and then, of course, target those that are involved in such activities, and, of course, the distinction between the two and the humane and smooth execution of these approaches. So that's what we're going to be taking a look at in our first segment of the show today. Our next one is going to be taking a look at the very important development with reference to the environment that we've, of course, seen in the recent days and months in Pakistan, the effects of smog and, of course, the AQI in Pakistan we've seen, and particularly in Lahore and Multan has even gone beyond 2000, which is extremely hazardous and has hit new records. This is, of course, very concerning and alarming in terms of the situation and what needs to be done and what can possibly be done. And we now see that the World Bank and the CD and the government of Pakistan seems to be in collaboration with an anti-smog strategy and developing and devising that way forward in terms of a more sustainable capital in a country where we can breathe more freely. So we're going to be taking a look at what that means, what it entails, and how do we actually address the core elements of this problem, and what sort of help can actually be provided by institutions such as the World Bank in order for Pakistan to really be tackling this issue and preventing such a situation next year that, of course, many people have experienced this year around and are still, of course, enduring in different parts of the country. So that is going to be our focus in the next segment of the show today. For this and more, as always, in the studios, I've been joined by senior analyst Farrukh Pitafi and Raja Faisal, and we've also been joined online for our first segment by Director Research IPRI, Dr. Raashid, Wali, Janjua. Thank you very much, Janjua Sab, for joining us and being a part of the discussion today. And I'll start with you, of course, with reference to the strategy that the government has put forward in different phases and elements with, of course, keeping in mind the fact that there have been a lot of involvement with reference to illegal activities and criminal activities and terrorist activities by Afghans in Pakistan, something, of course, that Pakistan has taken care of for many decades. But now this repatriation, of course, had initiated earlier this year, and we've seen a deadline being announced of the 31st of December, after which an NOC will be required. But I want your take in terms of what you think of this strategy in particular, beginning from the first phase, and now in terms of protecting those that are not involved in these activities and targeting those that are.
Well, you see, this issue of illegal Afghan refugees here has been discussed earlier also. And let's get few facts right at the outset. And those are that at the moment there are 1.4 million Afghan refugees which are registered with the UN, and their registration has been renewed last year, and it holds good till next 30th June, I believe. So that's one category. And the second is around 0.7 million that holds Afghan citizenship card. So they are of a different category, and those are also renewed based upon what Pakistan government thinks is the necessity of keeping those individuals as per their use to the country. There's yet another category which came after 2021, American withdrawal. and those are around 0.7 million again. And in the last 2 years, when the government started, crackdown against illegal Afghan settlers, then voluntarily as well as through government's efforts in an organized manner, around 0.662 million have gone back to Afghanistan. Now that's the state, that's the mosaic of the Afghan refugees, citizenship card holders, and those who came after 2021, and those who are still here, and probably they are awaiting their further disposal and visas onto the Western countries and United States, which promised them those visas. So this is the overall mosaic, and there's yet another category which is which does not come under any of the above categories, because those are illegal settlers, and the crackdown is meant against those. Now coming over to this latest announcement, as per the government communique that was in dawn also, all Afghan citizens, all Afghans, they would be getting NOC from the government to stay in Islamabad capital territory. Now I believe that's an administrative measure to ensure that Islamabad capital territory does not harbor any illegal Afghan settlers who are involved into illegal activities and crimes, because I think the catalyst was this protest, in which there are credible pieces of information by which there were several Afghan individuals which were involved, and those have been apprehended also with the law enforcement agencies. The investigations are underway. So in order to curb these things, because this is one aspect that they become part of such protests and create nuisance for the government and public, there's yet another implication of their presence, and that is the crime, because the Afghan settlers, those who are here as per the POR card or ACC, or they are in the third category that I mentioned, those at least are on the radar, and the law enforcement agencies can have a surveillance. But the category which is not in any sort of legal documentary process is a real danger. So I think this is meant against those. And then it could be an administrative measure also, because even if those who are registered and they all start congregating around Islamabad capital territory, the demographics are changing, there's a pressure on housing, there's a pressure on public infrastructure, and then there is an element of ghettoization also. And under such uncontrolled migration environment, crime also thrives. So I think that is the overall landscape under which the government has taken that decision.
Faisal, I want your perspective on this too, particularly in light of what we've seen recently in the past couple of days. And of course, the government has talked about involvement of such elements within these rallies as well. And so this is quite intermingled with the political landscape of the country as well, and of course, the law and order situation. And this is also one of the factors why this was initiated in the first place after many, many decades that Pakistan has hosted them. I want your perspective then on how we actually are differentiating and distinguishing between these elements within such political elements, and whether or not this is something that is being looked at just in terms of nationalities, or whether or not a different step or measure or layer is also added when it comes to scrutiny. I understand the announcement is for all with reference to the NOC, but what kind of facilitation can then be provided to those who are not part of these?
Yes, Sana, that's I think $1 million question. Why I say this? Because as a whole, obviously, this policy is a good policy, and that's how it should be. But when it comes to, of course, political element of it, it should never be politicized. I mean, every individual should be dealt with on the basis of the policy itself, rather than whether they have some kind of political, leaning towards one party or the other. That should be regardless of their political sort of affiliation. I mean, they are not voters at all. They can't vote in Pakistan, and then obviously they can be on the jalsas only on the behalf of whether they are there for just recreation or whatever the circumstances under which they are there. I mean, majority of them who are living in Islamabad, it is considered they have relations with the KPK people, with years and years of living in Pakistan. Obviously, it is almost 5 decades that they have been inhabiting in Pakistan, because decade after decade, the situations in Afghanistan, they saw them as obviously endangered, and they were endangered there, and they kept on moving to Pakistan. And of course, United Nations, they have their own plans for them, and UNHCR, it is fully involved in it. We know that a huge number of Afghan citizens in a city, Islamabad, there are many who joined the previous Afghan immigrants right after the Taliban took over. So there is a mechanism that actually supports them, and that is why in different sectors of Islamabad, in different housing societies of Islamabad, there are many dwellings in which there are buildings, and in them buildings there are many flats, and them flats, majority of them, of course, they are being covered by them people, and their rents are being given by United Nations itself. Of course, United Nations is facilitating them, but when it comes to they having relations with the KPK people, we already know that KPK and the terrain of Afghanistan, I mean, there are many villages where there is a village next to a village, and one village is in Afghanistan, the other one is in Pakistan, and they have, of course, relations amongst each other. Them relations are marital relations, and they keep on growing. These relations, they keep on growing, and that's how we end up seeing Afghan citizens blending in Pakistan at a large number, and Pakistan has been hosting Afghan immigrants in Pakistan, refugees in Pakistan for decades and decades. And I think here the question should be asked whether they have been, in terms of, the way Pakistan has been hosting them since a long time in peaceful environment in Pakistan, have there been any benefit to Pakistan itself? I mean, when it comes to these kind of things, that few of the elements, I'm not saying that all of the Afghan people are bad, I'm not saying that all of the Afghan immigrants or refugees who are in Pakistan, for whatsoever reasons, they are bad, no. But there is a large number of them who are involved in criminal activities, who are involved in car thefts, and then street crimes as well. All of them, they need to be scrutinized, they need to be dealt with, and the law must take its course. And these sort of policies, when they are going to be, of course, introduced, as we know that when the year starts 2025, it would be the implementation of that policy, I believe, in accordance to the policy itself, regardless of if they have, I mean, it's a human nature wherever he lives. As I was living in UK for a long time, and during that time I always supported Labour Party, and I considered myself somebody who's always vocal for the Labour Party against the Tories. So I consider that when you become a part of society, I mean, I'm not saying that I was involved in something else, but my role was constructive role in Britain. We seek constructive role of these Afghan immigrants, these Afghan refugees in Pakistan. so that they can benefit the society as well, rather than creating hurdles for the society.
What would you say to those Afghan nationals who feel that similar sentiment as you're describing that you might have in the UK in terms of their affiliation with the country? Many previously, with reference to the repatriation, have also talked about how this is their homeland. And I understand the measures have been taken in the larger interests of the country, but I want your perspective then on what exactly is being done to support that sentiment and to ensure that the people of Afghanistan, wherever they are here or they're being returned to their country, do not feel any ill with reference to this sentiment.
Yes, Sana, obviously when it comes to these kind of policies, with the introduction of these kind of policies, I am seeing that United Nations doors would be knocked again and again by the rest of the people who have not registered themselves with the United Nations. When once they have registered themselves with the United Nations, then of course they still have the chance to complete. I mean, many of them, they will be in the studies, they complete their studies. Many of them, they will be part of some kind of business or industry. Somehow they are contributing in terms of tax as well, tax collection for the Pakistan. So that is a sort of contributing positively for the society. They will end up, of course, as they are the positive people, they don't have a criminal record. I am pretty much sure that there will be a way out for them to continue their living in Pakistan. And I am pretty much sure even the Pakistan's institutions, they have a very robust mechanism to figure out which are the elements that are creating hurdles for the society itself. And all of these miscreants, they will be eventually, of course, skimmed out and thrown wherever they should be thrown. And to me, I think that's how it should be. And in further stages, as we will be coming near to the implementation of the policy, I'm pretty much sure that there will be sort of nicks and knocks that can be debated about, and that can be figured out that there is a third route as well. But so far, I think it's a good strategy to move forward, and that is a sort of deterrence for miscreants, deterrence for the criminal elements amongst all of these ranks. But I'm with those who are positively contributing towards the society of Pakistan, because I believe that when they leave their homes in Afghanistan, they left the homes just for one sake, and that was to find a peaceful space where they can grow up, where they can send their kids to the school, and they have the positivity in them. That's why they moved out of the place where there was too much of chaos for them, and they wanted to settle in a peaceful land. But at the same time, once Pakistan is providing them with the opportunity of having a life they always desired elsewhere, then they should be becoming the part and becoming the eyes and ears of the government itself, so that in this way they can positively, of course, contribute as well.
Absolutely, and I'll explore that further later in more detail. But Farrukh, I also want your take on this entire strategy, and particularly in terms of the execution of it. We've seen that in a lot of ways, in whatever aspects we talk about policies and decision making and their implementation, there is a lot that is required to ensure that the process is smooth, that the process is fair, that it's transparent, and that it doesn't have loopholes for people to be abused or harmed in any way. And I want your take on how will that be done, particularly when we take a look at the previous phases, and now with the fact that all Afghan nationals have a deadline and that they have to obtain a certain document. And while it is only a document, an NOC, and it seems pretty clear and straightforward, we know that unfortunately in a lot of ways, in a lot of aspects, there is a lot of room for improvement and actually ensuring that the process in itself is as smooth as it seems so. In that aspect, what do you think will be the nuances or complications involved that we'll be looking out for in terms of protecting the Afghan nationals for not going through any tedious exercise or any exercise that affects them unfairly?
Right, Sana, thank you very much for the question. I want to actually begin by mentioning this documentation issue, right? Particularly NOC, because a lot of Western countries that from where human rights concerns actually stem, they don't have any mandatory documentation policy in the country. That's why for them it might be something which is an outlier. But let me just remind everybody who's watching that in Pakistan, even for naturalized or regular citizens, carrying a document of identity, NIC, National Identity Card, is mandatory. You have to get registered. I carry my CNIC all the time. It is in my pocket. I'm sure that you also do it, and so does Faisal. So identity documentation is important because otherwise, anywhere, if there is some kind of conflict or crisis, you can be stopped and you can be asked to produce your document, right? And that is important because we have had animosity on both sides of the border, on eastern border and western border. So there's always a fear of somebody actually infiltrating and doing some harm. Now, NOC is a legitimate exercise. I think that is essential because without that you will not have a way to tell whether that person is here in what capacity and whether they might actually be sent by some hostile forces. Having said that, now the concern regarding systemic problems, that also has to be seen. Pakistan's machinery is not a well-oiled machine where automatically if somebody actually lacks a document or is being asked to have a document, immediately somebody goes after them. For example, in America, ICE is very active and it is going to be very active in the future immigration force, right? And that would be because America is so sensitized to the immigration issues. So is Europe. So in Pakistan, this is not how things work. So that would actually create a kind of buffer for, in the way of between a person and possible exploitation. Having said that, there is a distinct governance challenge that is posed by the Afghan Muhajireen or refugees in Pakistan. And given that the way Brigadier Saab and Faisal were actually mentioning that they have been here, a lot of them have been here for decades, almost half a century. Because of that there were, and given that our social fabric is such and our system has been quite corrupt in the past, especially documentation system, there were plenty, although Pakistan does not provide any path to naturalization, at least not to my knowledge, right, to Afghan refugees. But here's the thing, if somebody wanted to, there was enough foul play in the system that they could have obtained CNIC, they could have become nationals of Pakistan, and you wouldn't even know whether they actually came from, originally from Afghanistan. I'm talking about 50 years ago, 40 years ago. So if anybody has not become part of the system that way, that would essentially explain to you one of three possibilities. One, it is out of choice, and that means they carry their Afghan identity and they one day want to go back or at least be known as Afghan nationals, not as Pakistanis. The second one is that they might be recent arrivals, and the third one is, of course, poverty, and because of poverty, ghettoization actually took place back in 80s and back in 90s also, and that might have continued, and that's why they never had that option to play foul or some kind of manipulate the system. Now, because these people, most of them carry their identity, Afghan identity, and because of that, and perhaps because of the way our system actually works with them, many don't own our system, right? Now, what kind of problems that creates? On one side, again, there's ghettoization. There are places, poor places, where they will get together and where they will live, but they will not follow the law. Similarly, very poor actually are forced to indulge in some kind of crime. Back in 90s or 80s, there used to be, if you remember, G sector used to be given to most of the Afghan population, and especially those who were not Pashtuns. So their culture actually stood out, and that used to create very different kind of problems. But most of them are gone. Now the problem is that many of them, wherever they are, are not deliberately part of the system. For example, they will be using electricity but will refuse to pay bills because of their own understanding of how polio vaccine works. They will not administer polio vaccine, and that's why from Karachi to Khyber Pakhtunkhwa to Islamabad, wherever you have Afghan population, there's always chances of polio problem. Similarly, then they can also be used as a cannon fodder for some kind of fights. It can be terrorism, it can be like PTI. In PTI's case, we saw people actually participating. So documentation is a must. The best thing would be for them to be either repatriated or then to move on. But the problem again is that we are living in a very different country, world. At this moment, all over the world, anti-immigration sentiment is on the rise. In America, that has already taken place. On 20th of January, it is going to be red law. Similarly, in Europe, you are seeing anti-immigrant populist movements rising. Similarly, in India, you have also seen similar kind of thing. In Canada, there's again fear of having the similar kind of situation come next election. So with all that, I don't think that these promises that are being made to these people, especially those few who are Afghans and they are anticipating or waiting for transit to another country, I don't think that is going to happen. So Pakistan will have to first document them all, then find a way either to repatriate them or to find a third country refuge where perhaps it is possible. For example, when UK was under Tories, they had this plan to actually take a lot of people to Rwanda and settle them there. I don't know how many people would like to go, but Pakistan is really under a lot of stress from its own existing systemic problems. If you allow this governance challenge to persist, it is going to keep on creating problems, and in the end, it is going to, again, anti-immigrant extremist politics in the country. That is not good.
Absolutely. And Brigadier Raashid, I want your take on this as well in terms of what the sentiment does to the people within Pakistan and then, of course, within Afghanistan as well. And we've seen that there's a lot of trust deficit on many elements and occasions. But this is, of course, a very important factor that has connected both the countries for many decades now. And now that this repatriation has begun and the fact that Pakistan is moving forward to protecting its own situation as well from any such elements that can damage the country, I want your take on what that means for the way that the people of Afghanistan, both those that are residing within the country and in Afghanistan, view the country as, and how both the governments will actually be able to move forward in relation to this aspect.
You see, there are two aspects. One is the normal Afghan refugees and Afghan citizenship card holders, and the category that came post 2021. And there's another decision about NOC. So those two are entirely different things, and we should not mix them. Now about your specific question. You see, the sentiment in Afghanistan is that Pakistan should ease the border control, and by which they mean that the earlier system, which was a kind of a laissez-faire, where there was no single entry document regime, that suited them because there are problems inside Afghanistan also. And in a way, with our different setups of administration and border control also, there are many Afghans who come for medical tourism, and there is a whole ecosystem that they come here for not only their operations, their OPDs also. And then there were business linkages. But this single entry regime means visa. And they face a lot of problems in their own country, especially the poor people getting visas. And they feel the same once they come here, that there are several corrupt agencies, organizations that exploit them. So that should not happen, because that creates bad blood. The good thing is that Afghans look towards Pakistan, and they consider Pakistan as their second home because of the ethnic linkages. But like all countries in the region, we should be very clear about certain things that like two sovereign countries, there has to be a border. Border controls should be respected, and the border single entry visa, which is visa, that regime should be respected. What we need to do is to ease the process of giving visas to them so that they don't, poor people in Afghanistan do not have to wait too long. They should not be suffered at the hands of corrupt bureaucrats getting visas. So that thing should be done. But we have an Iranian example also. They have allowed a lot of Afghans out of humanitarian considerations also, and out of their own pragmatic requirements of a workforce. They issue work permits and they specify areas in which they keep those Afghan migrants, and then they allow them to go only after they have a work permit. So that work permit is kind of an ID. So whenever the Iranians desire, they just deport them back because they surveil it with the help of that information they have. So we need to do a better job of our overall surveillance, our own registration process, and resolving our border control complexities and corruption. And on Afghan side also, they need to resolve this process, because if they say that their people are not getting visas and this visa is a hurdle and that creates a lot of bad blood between the two countries, then the Afghan government's responsibility is there. It is their responsibility to ensure that their visa regime is corruption free. But it should not mean that the visa requirement should be undone. Now coming over to the second aspect, latest announcement that Afghan personnel in Islamabad, the capital territory, would require NOC. Now that NOC has to be given by the district administration, I believe, and that's under, I think, maintenance of public order. That's an administrative arrangement. I believe that has been done to ensure that the capital territory, which of late has been a victim of a lot of political, unrest, that does not suffer at the hands of those illegal settlers who come, and out of the kinship linkages, they also start congregating and creating those enclaves of certain ethnicity, which might create problems at law and order front. So I think the 31st December deadline has been given that all Afghan citizens need to get NOC, which are in Islamabad capital territory. Now, to me, it's a very difficult thing, and let's see how our district administration copes with the process of giving NOCs to all the Afghans. But I believe that's a measure to ensure that NOC is kept as a leverage, both to have a better surveillance and to retain leverage with the government to send any Afghan citizen away from the capital territory, which is a little doubtful, or the credential or the antecedents are not, they do not inspire confidence. So I think that's a law and order.
Very quickly, just to clarify, I wanted you to clarify when you are saying that this might be actually kept because of the political concerns. Don't you think that law and order is also a serious issue, given that we still are fighting terrorism in this country?
No, I didn't say it out of political concerns, but out of essentially it's administration by way of law and order, because crime, illegal activities, ghettoization, all those things, and changing the demographics of Islamabad, straining its public infrastructure, those are all administrative responsibilities, and district administration is well within its rights to accord NOC to any foreigner to live or go away from this territory. And this practice was on, I think, in other parts of Pakistan since the pre-independence times. As per the British practice in Quetta, they used to allow sometimes certain people to come and quota in, and certain people were declared quota out. So that was the prerogative of district administrator, that is the district commissioner. So now I think district administration wants to retain that leverage here.
Right. Thank you very much,
Thank
IPRI
you for
Raashid, Wali,
clarifying.
Janjua, for joining us and being a part of the discussion today and speaking to us at length about, of course, this particular policy and repatriation of Afghan nationals, for which, of course, 31st December is the deadline. Faisal, you wanted to add something? Yes.
Yeah, but in this context, Sana, I wanted to add, and that is related to, of course, practices which are being followed by Western countries, and that is related to, you know, if there are people who have applied for asylum or who are refugees in their countries, there is a mechanism. They get registered with them, and every month, once a month or twice a month, they are given a date, they are given a time, that is the date and that is the time you have to be there. You have to sign that you are still in this same city, and they are obviously, there is a mechanism that goes whenever they are appearing there. By the time they, since the last time and the current signatures they do, it already flags them whether they were involved in any crime or not, whether they were involved in any activity that is considered as a crime or not. If they are considered as being involved in such of the activities, they obviously straight away get nipped down. But if somebody who does not appear for the signatures once a month or twice a month, then of course they are considered lawless people, and then they are the ones who get tasked to, and they never get the permission to enter in that city. So I think these kind of activities, they can be controlled by introducing these kind of course, policies.
Right.
And at the same time, let's be fair. Eventually, it's their choice to be here because of a peaceful environment, and we are going to ensure that that peaceful environment becomes more peaceful through these kind of policies.
Right. Yes, Farrukh.
Right. I just wanted to actually clarify a couple of things. One, of course, nobody wants to actually stigmatize the entire community, but you have to realize that a foreigner is a foreigner, right? And by virtue of that, you have to realize that there will have to be some kind of rules of engagement that have to be there. But that is not on all, Sana. The biggest problem right now is that when you talk about the growth of Islamabad city, the way it is managed, it becomes really a hectic job when you allow an element which is not documented at all. I understand that Brigadier Sahab was talking about UN provided documentation, but remember that those documentation do nothing for the system of administration, because there has to be a system here as well where you at least have some kind of documentation for snap checking. If somebody is stopped, if somebody is checked, there should be identification marker also. If that is done, of course, things will improve. My only concern right now is that we keep on waiting for a lot of these people to actually move on to greener pastures. But unfortunately, the world is changing very quickly. So Pakistan will have to have this very serious dialogue with its own people, what to do with them eventually, because the world that was there, that was inviting them and keeping them in limbo, might no longer be there.
Right, absolutely. And speaking of that, of course, we're going to take a look at our next segment, which also takes a look at the issues with reference to what has been going on in the environment, and something that Pakistan has been struggling with, which is changing the world altogether. And Faisal, we've seen this year record highs in terms of AQI in Lahore and Multan, and this is very, very concerning and alarming, and is causing a lot of problems for the people of the country. We see World Bank and CDA getting together. That's a good sign for an anti-smog strategy. But what really will be the future of this collaboration, and how to exactly picture the way forward in terms of what can possibly be done?
Yes, and obviously when we talk about World Bank coming to, of course, Pakistan to help out in this context, of course, when this kind of organization it gets involved in something, they have the adequate experience of dealing with these kind of situations. They have the right people, the right analysts, the right experts of the field who have the up-to-date knowledge and who have the up-to-date knowledge about the tech that can be utilized to, of course, control all of these situations. I think it's a great step forward, and in coming years and months we will see that there will be a positive impact on Pakistan's environment of different cities, especially the cities that are facing this menace. And especially we have been highlighting in recent times, we have been highlighting situations in Lahore. In Lahore, situations were so dire that people were even even struggling to get out because the lack of clean oxygen, it wasn't there, and it was not livable at all. And a country like Pakistan that is facing all of these problems, and it is more of a contribution of the whole world that Pakistan has turned out to be one of the most fragile countries in terms of climate change and global warming. In this context, I think it's a very good step forward, and this should be considered a first step towards contributions between the world and Pakistan. And when it comes to further steps, they are much needed one, and not only for the smog, but of course how to control the floods, how to, of course, every year we face other calamities as well. In all of that context, of course, more is needed to be done, and more is needed to be invested by the world. And now, after COP29, we know that there is a budget which is assigned, which is agreed upon, and accepted not only from Pakistan but majority of the world.
It still hasn't been seen.
And majority of the world. And in coming days, what we will see is that Pakistan will be considered as a country that can get the climate justice. We know that we've been promised since more than 2 years that we will get that justice, and there were pledges which were made.
But we haven't, right? And
haven't.
That's the problem, because the thing is, we're facing this issue today, and we're losing people today because of this, and this is the real problem. And we've faced this year on and on. It's not the first year that we've seen the smog. And so, Farrukh, I want your take on how exactly we can take a look at it at home in terms of our own accountability and responsibility, and the onus of institutions, of people and the government in ensuring that we do the best that we can to prevent the situation and to tackle this through innovative solutions and move forward in terms of actually prioritizing this issue. Has that been done so far?
Right. Thank you very much again. It is a very fascinating subject, especially because there are two dynamics here at play. One, Pakistan's own poor management in the past, because of which things might have actually come to this situation. The second, of course, our neighbor, which is an industrial hub, and because of that it also keeps on polluting, and because we are adjacent, their pollution reaches us as well. Now, regarding our own accountability, I think that we started seeing some kind of upgradation plan and some kind of momentum in that direction, but the problem is that that will also take some time. Now, regarding World Bank coming to Pakistan's aid, now in the past, every time my response would have been, why actually look a gift horse in the mouth, and one should welcome it. But aging actually gives you this unique critical perspective, skeptical perspective, and that's why I'm just going to say that all these things or interventions require money. And whenever a foreign body is in your country helping you out, they have their staff, then they also need some kind of even creating plans actually take money. So who's going to actually foot that bill? Is it going to be Pakistan, or is it going to be World Bank? If World Bank does it and eventually Pakistan has to pay, then it becomes a loan, and then I have to look at the interest rates also, because Pakistan is already highly indebted, right? With those concerns, of course, there's always a possibility that it might be made into some kind of grant. But in the end, remember, World Bank or no World Bank, Pakistan has very gifted people, technocrats also, who understand technology, who understand these dynamics, climate experts also, and they should be, without any foreign intervention, be able to do much for this country. We have an EPA also. We have a, climate ministries are also there at province level. So all of them should work together to find a solution for these problems. Otherwise, if we keep on waiting for outside help, it will come, but it will hardly ever be up to our own liking.
Right. Thank you very much, Farrukh, and thank you, Faisal, for joining us in the debate as always. And we really hope, of course, that we are moving forward in the right direction with regards to such issues, which are, of course, affecting the people of Pakistan on a national scale. And this is something that, of course, that we need to deal with and prioritize in order to ensure the safety and security and the health of our citizens. And something, of course, that we've seen hit record highs in terms of the AQI in certain cities in Pakistan. And, of course, is priority. So the World Bank and CDA collaboration is welcome. But, of course, it remains to be seen what exactly will be the way forward and how do we actually go about it. That's all that we have from the debate today. We'll now see you tomorrow.